of my bed is the very last place that I want to be right now. But I get to be up, and that's something to be grateful for. And the longer I'm out here, the happier I am. So, upwards and onwards. Carpe diem, baby. I just finished this book right now, Son of Nobody by Yann Martel. If that name's familiar, he also wrote The Life of Pi, and that book was really good and really interesting. I only checked it out because the other books that I wanted to read this summer were not available. It was very unique. We can see the different structures, so it's explained all in the author's notes, which aren't actually the author's notes, which is also kind of interesting. So Yann Martel was not he wrote the author's note from the perspective of the character that is also the author. I'm not sure if that made any sense. So the top half of the page is this ancient Greek epic, and then the bottom half is the author's notes, so the main character's notes, which talked both about personal experiences as well as his reflections on the Greek epic that he was translating. It was very interesting to read in that format. I had never read something like that before, and then it was also just the story. I really like, I guess, Greek mythology, and especially popular as well, with the Odyssey coming out, but that was completely coincidental timing. If anybody does decide to read it, I know it's not good, but I always skip the author's notes and like the prologue. But in this book, it's actually quite important because the author's notes, like I said, were the main character's notes. So the author's notes were actually like part of the story and gave a really good like introduction to what is actually happening in the story, and it's not the like novel's author notes, which when I finished, I just went back and I read those. This is where a book club would be really cool because talking about that would be really, really interesting. And it definitely reinforced how much more I want to get into Greek classics and classical literature like that. On to the next. Not sure what it'll be yet, but excited.
Hello. I don't think you knew we were here. Hi. Hello. Look at him.
Oh, that's what I was. Do we leave the stuff on, or do we?
Look at how fuzzy. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Pollen Central, you need to clean.
I am about to go to a kind of French-inspired cafe over in Cleveland. The book that I was going to read next is called Four Fish by Paul Greenberg. And I've read the introduction and I think like the first little bit of the first chapter or the first section. And I was a little bit nervous at first because in the introduction he was talking about environmentalism, especially when it comes to seafood, so coastal areas, that it would be very easy from a upper middle class perspective to skip over a lot of the history and indigenous peoples that are, or at least once were, reliant on seafood and fishing as part of their life and well-being. And already in the first section about salmon, he's not only talking to indigenous voices, but talking about indigenous businesses and fisheries and sustainable fishing. And so I think I'm going to really enjoy this book. I'm not a huge fan of nonfiction, but I'm very much into environmentalism. Taking us back full circle to the cafe, they have sardine toast. And I'm so scared of trying small fish, but I think I might give that a go. But we will see. I've gotten ready. I'm gonna pack a bag and get going.
It is, yeah. That's why I was like, yeah. But then, like, also, you know, she came in with UTI, which I think. Yeah. I was like, if I'm gonna be living alone, I want like to do It's enormous.
Ended up being really lovely. Judith really does foster community, especially in this area. You know, it's a restaurant, but it also does serve kind of as a third space for people to meet and get together. So just very nice to get out into different neighborhoods, kind of get out of the bubble of your own town, especially when you live in a city where there is a pretty profound wealth gap. And not to say that this is necessarily a more rugged area by any means, but to just get in and see different ways of living in, you know, they might not be less expensive, but in closer quarters. And, you know, your yards are smaller, you're not living in these giant mansions, but does that foster something else that, you know, you lose when you can't see your neighbor's front door, or, you know, you can't walk over to their property very easily to say hello. And you not only see these like architectural differences, but you see different groups of people. And I think that that's so important, to not shelter yourself within your own town and get to see how other people live, even if it's not, you know, that profoundly different. There are differences wherever you go. I think a lot of people do fail to see that. So yeah, here's your sign to go hop over to a few neighboring cities, see what you find, see who you find, and get to learn about a little something new.
Neat, eh?
Mm-hmm.
you.
I stopped partway through mowing the lawn because I knew our monarchs were going to lay all of these eggs on these tiny little shoots in our yard. So each one of these little pearls are going to be a future caterpillar. So we have 11 new ones on the way.